Electric Friends, a Gary Numan podcast. The songs and stories of a music icon.
About little deals and issues, things I just don't understand. My name is Ruben, my name is Ramjan.
2026 marks the 50th anniversary of Gary Numan's first proper foray into the world of music, when as an 18-year-old he fronted the band Mean Street before being dropped rather unceremoniously without much explanation. Soon after, he auditioned as the guitarist for another band called The Lasers, where he met bass player and then singer Paul Gardiner. By the end of this audition, held at his mum and dad's house in Wraysbury, he had already got them to play his own songs, and he had become their lead singer. When picking a new name for the band, Gary suggested the name of a short story he was working on. The story was about a gang that would go on the London Underground and jump off at random stations, attack whoever was there, and get back on. Thus, the band became Tubeway Army. Paul was the plugger of the band in these early days, and he took their demo of 3 songs to a Beggars Banquet record shop. It was here that Paul discovered that Beggars had started their own record label, and it wasn't long before co-owner Martin Mills got in touch. Following a somewhat nervy gig at the Vortex Club in London, the band was signed and their first single, That's Too Bad, was released in February 1978. So for this episode of Electric Friends, we'll take a look back at Gary's first ever official single, That's Too Bad. Tubeway Army consisted of Gary, named Valerian at the time for a very short period, Paul, aka Scarlett, and Gary's uncle Jess Lidyard, aka Rail, drums. Other guitarists and drummers appeared on and off between 77 and 78, but it was this core 3 who would play on their first few records. Although Gary was more influenced by the glam of T-Rex than the early days of punk, Tubeway Army's first recordings were more on the punk end of the rock spectrum, though with a sci-fi storytelling slant. Gary would become disillusioned with the pub venue gigs they were playing, often leading to violent reactions from the crowd, and they would for a time become a studio-only band. In March 78, Tubeway Army recorded a series of demo tracks. The idea was to give Beggars Banquet a rough idea on what a full Tubeway album would sound like, but Gary was so prolific with his songwriting that he had already grown out of them as soon as they were recorded. These tracks would be kept in the Beggars vault for a number of years until they were finally released as a compilation under the name The Plan in 1984, 5 years after Gary's mainstream breakthrough. Perhaps surprisingly to Gary, who later wrote that he had forgotten about some of the songs on it, the album was a top 40 success. As Gary explains himself, That's Too Bad and the majority of the songs from this period were written and recorded purely to get a record contract and to get his foot in the door. Punk was all the rage, and he was happy to follow suit. Gary said, the song was written 99% to get a contract. It was a naive attempt to make punk commercial, which it didn't do. Writing in Revolution, he said,
I'm not sure exactly what day I signed the contract with Beggars, but That's Too Bad was released on 10th of February 1978, 4 days before my mum's 40th birthday. It was also the day I stopped working at W.H. Smith, my last proper job, and it's a day I've always considered as the true start of my career. I remember seeing the sleeve for the first time, listening to the vinyl record for the first time. It was such an amazing feeling. I was 19, I had a record deal, and I'd released my first single. It sold about 4,000 copies, nothing at all really, but it felt like a huge number at the time. 4,000 people had bought one of my records, listened to my songs, actually liked them, presumably. 4,000 people. That would have been about 5 full assembly halls at Ashford Grammar. That was just huge to me. The music press didn't really like it, unfortunately. They had nothing good to say about it, or me, in fact. With my bleached blonde hair, they said I either looked like Steve Severin from Susie and the Banshees, or Billy Idol. I wasn't known as Gary Numan at that point. I was still struggling to find a name that felt right and was more rock starry than Webb. I called myself Valerian on a sleeve of That's Too Bad. I seen it written on a wall somewhere, thought it had a nice flow to it. That was definitely a mistake.
Martin Mills at Beggars Banquet was a big fan of That's Too Bad, but it wasn't a chart hit for the band, despite selling over 4,000 copies. If you sold that now, you'd probably get to number 1. In terms of the song itself, you could say it sits right on the fault line between punk attitude and the sci-fi alienation that would soon define his work. On one level, it sounds like a paranoid slice of social commentary. The opening image of the camera eye searching my room feels like a nod to Orwellian surveillance or media intrusion, a world where privacy has disintegrated and the individual is constantly watched.
Look up in the camera eye, searching my room. The TV screen is calling me before what I do. Please, Mr. TV, careful, I'm so fragile. Maybe it'll let me down to speed this place for a while. Oh, well, that's too bad. Oh, well, that's too bad. Oh, well, that's too bad. Oh, well, that's too bad.
The TV screen calling me hints at both addiction to technology and a sense of being summoned or controlled by it. So even at this early stage, Numan seems to be questioning how machines and media shape identity. The second verse adds a self-aware twist. He talks a lot, a sign of fear, and admits that his own image, pictures of me, leaves him unimpressed. There's a strong sense of insecurity, of someone struggling to assert their humanity in a mechanised environment. When he says, "I'll come on to the leader like I'm some hero," is almost a mockery of rebellion, the false bravado of someone trying to impress authority but knowing it's pointless.
Don't go loud, a sign of fear, I thought you should know. I can see pictures of me where there's a slow. I'll come on to the leader like I'm some hero. Yeah, I've been rich today and hasn't meant to me to go.
Closing verse, 1920 flashbacks for an hour or more, suddenly scrambles time and tone, perhaps a malfunction in his memory or mind. A reference to crazy actors hiding and machines screaming in anger feels like a surreal mix of old and new worlds colliding, the ghosts of early cinema meeting the rage of modern machinery.
1920 flashbacks for an hour or more. Oh, crazy actors hiding in the doorways to floor. Machines screaming anger from 1,000 dead ends. I turn my face, I crawl away, I look for a friend.
So while it's framed as a punk song about frustration and detachment, those sci-fi elements are somewhat baked in. Artificial surveillance, fractured identity, technological decay, and disconnection from reality. You can see Gary's future characters, like those in Our Friends Electric or Metal, emerging from this same world, lonely figures trying to feel human inside systems that no longer care. He admitted himself that he wanted to seem spacey even back then, as well as the fictional name Valerian, and the artwork shows a futuristic train emerging from the metropolis-style city in the background, with the Tubeway Army rules OK graffiti on the walls, referencing the story from which the name came from. Numan said, "I wore the spacesuit on the back of the sleeve of the That's Too Bad single sleeve once at a gig at Ashford Grammar School in Middlesex. It wasn't a spacesuit exactly, it was a little two-piece number bought from King's Road, I might add, made out of some high-tech insulating material, so it was fucking hot." There are two versions of the song. The first demo version, which later appeared on the Plan, is a somewhat more stripped-back version of the song. The Plan version is rougher, more lo-fi, and sounds like it was recorded quickly, typical of Numan's early Beggars Banquet demos. The guitars are fuzzier and more chaotic, with less polish on the vocals. single version, recorded later in '78, is a cleaner, more balanced mix with tighter rhythm guitar and a slightly more controlled vocal delivery. Generally though, there's not a massive difference, with Gary doing his punk meets Bowie style of vocal delivery as well as the harmonised guitars, which hint at what was to come with his method of synth layering. A few quirks of the single. The back of the original vinyl single sleeve contained two discrepancies. Valerian was spelt Valerian with a U, and the band picture featured live drummer Bob Simmons, not Jess Lidyard, who actually played in the recording session. It was also later released as a gatefold with the single Bombers in August '79. It was released in its original form in '83, reached number 97 in the UK charts. The B-side of the track was another punk offering, Oh Didn't I Say. This one is all about identity and trying to make it clear he's not a sheep following the herd, but also someone who sounds a little confused as to who he actually is.
Hello, faces staring through my window. Sometimes I can play a boy in mind. No station, standing cold on more, I'm insane. Gender is uncertain, just like my name. The lemon kid is my friend, but even he don't know me well. Oh, that's too bad. When a waiter isn't a man, how looks at me so slice dry. Oh, what's on his mind? Oh, didn't I say I'm not one of you? Oh, didn't I say I'm not one of you?
Gary often honours That's Too Bad by bringing it back into his live sets, performing it many times from '92 onwards, most recently at his Electric Ballroom 1000 shows in 2023. So looking at your comments about the song, Steve Price said, for me, after hearing the Tubeway Army Blue vinyl album and absolutely being so addicted to it, I found That's Too Bad single at Small Wonder Records in Walthamstow. I used to frequent every weekend and played it to death along with Bombers, then discovered the Gatefold re-release of the two and still never tire of hearing it all these years later. Mark Fox said, I think it's superb, I always really liked his punkier stuff, also a huge fan of Oh Didn't I Say. Steve Hamilton said, utter shock when he played it on the Isolate tour in London in '92, I think with a selection of Tubeway Army tracks. John Birmingham said, I purchased That's Too Bad and Bombers when they were re-released as a gatefold duo back in '79. In fact, I've still got it. I remember playing That's Too Bad on our stereo system, only for Mum to say that beginning is like Oh Pretty Woman. She may have had a point. Simon Rimman said, once I'd bought Our Friends Electric, I backtracked that summer to get Down in the Park and the first Tubeway Army album. The double pack came out and I got it. Love That's Too Bad, as I'd been into punk in '76, '77. It could have been a double A side, to be honest. Perhaps I prefer the B. And a couple of funny comments that I like. Jacob Clark said that he sings it to his girlfriend when things don't go her way. And Sandra Corby said, my hubby thought he was singing Whoa Elastic Band. So all in all, That's Too Bad's important in the history of Gary Numan cannot be understated. It was the song that started it all, and the song that Martin Mills thought was good enough to be a single and gave Gary that foot in the door. And the rest, they say, is history. Now, I'd normally save Numan news for the bonus episodes, but there was one thing that was so monumental in the Numan world that I had to bring it up, and I'll probably bring it up again in the next news update. But ahead of the Telecon tour, Gary unveiled a new 45th anniversary release of the album, and among the track list was a previously unheard track from the Telecon sessions called Like a Bee Film, and it made the 12-year-old self in me very, very excited. It was like travelling back to the first time I discovered him, and it's so strange and amazing hearing a brand new Numan track from that era, and I already love it.
Reply, you don't care, see you're not there.
So I'd like to hear your thoughts about the song and your general story of how you found Gary and his music and became a Numanoid, just like Gary Watkins did. He emailed me saying, "Hi Tom, firstly thanks for making the excellent podcasts. I first met Gary at Blackbush Airport in 1980. At the time he had a blue Ferrari, I think it was a Ferrari, the registration plate was GN4, and a black and red Piper Neveo. I'm sure about that, I was a plane spotter. The plane looked amazing, painted up with the red stripes matching the Telecon album and Gary's stage suit from the era. I'd already been a fan since Our Friends Electric was first introduced to me by a fellow music fan in the sixth form. As well as buying every record I could, I also had a Betamax video of the Farewell Wembley tour, where I'd come home from school and watch it all the way through on an almost daily basis. The next time I met Gary face to face was at a meet and greet in Leicester in March 2018. He signed my copies of Our Friends Electric and Living Ornaments, and we had a chat about flying. I've since become a professional pilot and found the episode with his brother John very interesting. Gary told me how proud he was of him. Over the years, I've introduced many people to Gary's fantastic music, including my wife, my 3 boys, who loved the Wembley gig a couple of years ago. In fact, we could see ourselves in the audience when it was televised. There weren't that many 14-year-olds amongst the Numanoids in the crowd, but my twins weren't the only teenagers enjoying the amazing atmosphere and fantastic music, proving the broad appeal that Gary now has. I also introduced a very good friend of mine to Gary's talent, Ian, who I first met when I was a student and lived opposite me in the halls of residence. I saw the Berserker tour with Ian and many tours since. We had tickets to see him at Rock City in Nottingham next month, but sadly, Ian passed away unexpectedly last month. Ian won't be there this time, but I know I'll be in the company of many like-minded, great people. To friends old and new, Gary Watkins." Well, thanks so much for that, Gary. A lovely and heartwarming story, and sorry to hear about Ian. And if you'd like to send your own story or just get in touch in general, just email me, just like Gary did, newmanpodcast@gmail.com. You can also get in touch and follow me on all the socials at Numan Podcast, and you can find all episodes, including video interviews, on YouTube. And exciting news, if you'd like to support me and the podcast and proudly showcase your love for the podcast at future Numan gigs perhaps, you can now get official Electric Friends merch. There's a mug, stickers, t-shirt and tote bag on offer. Just head to the show notes of this episode, whether that's on YouTube or on Spotify, wherever you are, for where to get them, or if you head to electric-friends.printify.me, you will be able to find them there. That's it for this episode though. I'll be back soon with another Numan song to delve into, plus more Numan news. But for now, stay safe and see you soon.
Electric Friends, a Gary Numan podcast. The songs and stories of a music icon.